Good morning and welcome to It's How You'll Be Remembered. I am Julie Jones, your host and the CEO of today's professionals. And I'm here by myself today for a reason, because we have a hot topic to discuss today. And that is what happened to work ethic? Like, what's going on in our workplace? And so I wanted to come on today and talk to you. If you're here, by the way, say hello, drop a comment. You are on LinkedIn, if you're on Facebook, or if you're on YouTube, be sure and say hello. We want to hear from you. And today we are talking about what's going on in why people can't show up on time. I mean, hiring managers are telling me we hired them, we gave them the offer letter, we gave the employee handbook, we're onboarding them. Their onboarding meetings start at 9 o'clock, which is our start time. We told them to be here at 9, but they show up at 9:45 and go, "Oh, I'm sorry, my bad, missed that meeting." Or we've got people who don't know how to communicate at all. We've got the Gen Z stare. You may have seen, I've done some post on that. That's been viral on social media, where you say something and people just stare at you. And we're seeing it. They're saying the Gen Z stare, but I'm going to tell you, it's not just Gen Zs. I mean, it seems like our communication process, there's something going on up here. It's just what's happening. Like, we can't seem to process and communicate. And working as a team, like doing your part, volunteering to say, "Hey, I've got this," being organized enough to know that we've got to get this done, and then let your team members know when it's done, and to meet deadlines. I mean, this is all really important stuff, and we are struggling to get it done. So what is really happening? I have some thoughts on that. Hello, Ron. It's so good to see you. Boomers said this of Gen Xers, and Gen Xers said this of millennials, and on and on. You are so right. You know, I say this all the time. You're preaching, you're speaking my language. And that is, every generation when they come out of college, we all say, what's going on with them? Why are they doing this? I remember as a Gen Xer, coming into the workplace and wearing heels and stuff for the first time. And back then we wore nylons, we wore nylons and heels. And so by lunchtime, my feet would hurt. And so I'd kick my shoes off and I'd run around bare, in my stocking feet, literally. And I had to be told, "Julie, you can't do that." But that's what I was used to, because I grew up running around barefoot all the time. And then, we had the millennials come in, and they just really wanted, to be loved and nurtured. And so, we wanted the promotion, but it really wasn't about the promotion. It was just giving them a title. There was a big joke about that for a long time. But now the millennials are scratching their head going, what is going on? And so I had this conversation last week. I had several radio interviews about the Gen Z stare, and I was talking about the communication skills, and how we just have to work on developing them with our employees, with our children even. And this one of the hosts said, "I think it's sad that we're having to teach 20-something-year-olds how to communicate." Well, and to a certain extent, I see what he meant, but let's really look at it. When you are crossing over from college or high school into the business world, it is different. There are expectations and how you communicate. And so we have to teach people how to do that. I know that when I took a class with Sandler sales several years ago, it was really about how to have a conversation, going through a sales process, and what does that look like? And so it's all about communicating, because sales and customer service is about communication. And so if you've never been taught to do that, then it's our job to really teach people and meet people where they are and bring them forward. And so we're developing a generation of leaders. And sometimes those new generation of leaders may be in their 40s. I mean, maybe they've just had their head down and been working their whole career. And now all of a sudden they've been promoted, and we didn't really teach them how to lead. I mean, we meet people where they are, right? And then that's how we develop people. And that's really what we do as a community and as companies. We develop leaders, and we develop the next generation and develop people That's really, I think, what we're put on this earth to do. But a lot of people have asked me, why is it that we have such problems with work ethic? And I have some thoughts on that. And so one of them is, I think it started years ago, and I was actually a part of this as a teacher. Our school campuses recognize at the end of the year, we want to recognize our top achievers, right? And so we have top math student, highest math score, and we might recognize the top 2 or 3, math scores or science scores or language arts scores, or all these academic records. But then what campuses and administrators were talking about with us as teachers is, every child is special. Every child deserves to be recognized at the end of the year. So let's find something to recognize a strength. Maybe academics wasn't their strength, but maybe they have a great smile, or maybe they're a future leader, or maybe they have great style sense, and so we start to recognize the characteristics of each student. And the intent behind that is noble. And I agree that every child is want to highlight those special aspects of them. But I'm wondering if maybe there wasn't some unintended consequences with that thought process. And I'm not saying that alone is the reason, but it's that whole thought process, that everybody gets a trophy mindset. Because when you start to develop mental toughness or resilience, and that goes into the work ethic of doing things you don't want to do, means that you have to understand that you don't always get a recognition. If awards day at the end of the year is to recognize academic achievement, then let's recognize those students who worked hard with academic achievement. And then we do something else for the students who are fantastic kids and they are just wonderful. We want to recognize them, because then that carries over into college and into the workplace, where everybody has kind of a lessened idea of what it looks like to be mentally tough and to understand you don't always get the prize. I mean, you think about this with mental toughness. I mean, I was with Sandler Sales for a while, and he had a program that was called No Guts, No Gain. And it was a special program outside of the sales process and the training that went on with having those sales conversations. But it was about the mental toughness aspect of it. It was something different. It was like, how do you set your mind to be tough? And so it was really nice. I mean, it was like, growth comes from being uncomfortable. We have to be uncomfortable in order to grow. And it talks too about separating emotion from logic. People will buy on emotion, but they justify it logically. So, how do we understand emotion versus logic? And we have to understand when we're emotional versus when we're logical, and how do we make good decisions based on that? I mean, those are just a couple of the things that came from that program. But you know how much I love Zig Ziglar, right? I'm a Ziglar coach and so proud to be part of that amazing family. But he also talked about this a little bit differently. He talked about becoming the person you are supposed to be in order to have the dreams and the life that you want to have. He talks about you can't always have everything right now because you're not ready for it. He talks about you have to be the person you need to be, and you need to do the thing that you need to do. Because if you aren't the person you need to be, then can you do the things that you need to do, those action steps that help you have the life that you want to have? He also talked about we don't drown by getting in the water. And I'm probably paraphrasing this, but you drown by staying there. And I would say you drown by not having the skill set to be in that water. I mean, I thought about that quote this weekend. I was with my 2 grandbabies. I have a 2-year-old grandbaby and a 5-year-old. And so the 5-year-old is learning to swim. She's just not real confident. So staying in the shallow water where she can stand up is good for her. It builds that confidence. It's that scaffolding that she needs. Whereas the 2-year-old can go anywhere in the pool because she's got on the jacket, it's almost like a life preserver, and she's got the floaties, and she jumps in because she has something that is keeping her afloat. But there are two different places where they swim, but we as adults are always with them too to make sure that they're okay, right? That when they jump into the pool, they're jumping into the pool that is deep enough for them to jump, but yet my 5-year-old needs to stand up because she needs that security of I'm okay until she builds her confidence. And so we want to build those skills into till they are confident swimmers, which they both will be, but it's going to take time. And everybody progresses differently, right? There are probably 5-year-olds who are swimming laps somewhere because they've just been in the pool. They're not afraid. They don't have the same fears, but we meet people where they are and we build the scaffolding from there. And it's the same thing with receiving feedback, with communication, with soft skills. And I think mental toughness is probably one of the most important soft skills, because if you can have that resilience and you know, okay, I tried this, it didn't work, or I had a bad day. You know, Zig Ziglar also says that failure is an event. It's not a person. Think about that. Failure is an event. It's not a person. And I would even say failure, you know, don't think of it as I failed, I can't do this. It's I have a lot to learn here. You know, just like swimming. You know, it's not a failure if you jump in with your floaties, right? Because it's where you are. But when you take them off, what are the steps then that you need to do to learn to swim so that you're safe? How do you stay in the water that keeps you safe where you are so that you can gradually go into the deeper end? It's the same thing with we want to separate those roles from being an event or a role from being who you are. You as a person are not a failure at all, but you just need to learn some skill sets, but that's how you grow. And you can't learn them all overnight. I mean, I'm constantly learning new things. You know, right now I'm learning about artificial intelligence and how to use it in my business to make my business more efficient. But I also know too that where is my scaffolding needing to be? Like, how do I jump off into the deep end here and get to where I can use AI more? I have to learn about it. And so I have to invest the time to do that. Tom Ziglar was on here a while back and he talked about the greenhouse effect. And in this, what I'm going to talk about is the lawnmower parents that clear the way for their kids, and they don't want their kids to ever endure any hardships. You know, these are parents who are showing up to job interviews with their students, and we're hearing with their kiddos, and I'm talking kiddos. I mean, I'm talking 20-year-olds, you know, 25-year-olds. They're showing up, and they'll even call to negotiate terms of a contract. You know, when they're negotiating salaries and benefits in a job, you'll have parents who will call and say, I want to talk to you about my child's contract. Well, your child is 27 years old. So let's teach him or her how to do that. And so these are the lawnmower parents. And so there's a greenhouse effect. That's a story that came out of California. And Tom Ziglar was telling me about this on here just a few months ago. And he said that several years ago, there was a fire. You know, California suffers from fires. And so they were wanting to plant trees faster to grow and recover. And so they were growing these saplings in a greenhouse. And so when there would be a fire, they would come in and plant these saplings so that the trees would grow faster and they could, you know, replace that in the damaged environment quicker. But what they found was the saplings were not surviving. Most of them were dying. And so they would go into the greenhouse and they realized that in the greenhouse, everything was perfect. The environment was perfect year round. They had enough water and they had all the nutrients. They were being fed what they needed. And there was no wind and there was no heat and no excessive cold. And so when they would take them from this perfect greenhouse and plant them in the natural environment where they were going to need to thrive, they couldn't thrive because they had become used to just being in perfect conditions. So what they did is they started creating in the greenhouse more natural environments. So they would not feed them as often as they needed to be fed. The water would be, sometimes they would have to go for days or weeks without water. And then they would have wind blowing and they would have extreme heat, and then the temperature would drop, and they created a more natural environment inside the greenhouse. And when they planted those saplings, most of them survived because they were creating a DNA for survival and to overcome and to thrive in whatever environment that they were in. And so we need to do that with not only our children. We need to walk alongside them. And what Tom said is that the lesson is that when our children, our students, or even our young employees, or any employee even, because this is not just about young employees, but when they go through rough times, our role is to support them and say, hey, this really stinks. You're going through a hard time right now, but I'm here for you. I'm going to walk alongside you with this, but I'm not going to fix it for you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to build some scaffolding for you, give you some training, do some things that you need to help you get through this so that you can thrive. And then we teach them how to weather the storm. Because at the end of the day, we need to be able to teach them how to receive the feedback. That even though it's negative feedback or they view it as a failure, it's really just, hey, this is an area where you can improve. Maybe you're uncomfortable still in this area. Let's get some practice in here. Let's give you a mentor. Let's send you to some classes. Let's do some things that will help you grow in this area, because it's all about developing the people, right? And so for me, I know that right now there's a lot out there as far as work ethic and Gen Zs. And I'm going to say it's not just Gen Zs. I'm going to say it's all of us. We've all slacked a little bit because we've been at home a lot, right? We're coming back into the office. A lot of companies now are calling their employees back full time. And so we need to be able to equip people to work together. You know, we talk about the microwave a lot. You know, you may remember the post that I did about, annoying coworker habits, and that you shouldn't heat fish in the microwave at work, or burn popcorn or those kinds of things. You know, we have to get used to this, and there's going to be a learning curve. But in order to bridge the gap, we need to be able to do that. So what can employers do? Well, I think one thing is encourage the discomfort. You know, if you don't know how to do something, say, you know what, you can learn it. So what do you need from me to help you learn this skill? And it's okay if you don't learn it overnight. I'm going to help you. So we need, as companies and managers and leaders, to say, we're going to help them. We're going to walk with them through this. We're not going to fix it. We're not going to clear the path. We're not going to be lawnmower managers. We are going to help them learn to do it, because then that's going to really elevate their self-confidence, and it's really going to elevate your culture too. I think too, helping them with self-management, helping them with, okay, so can you clear out time on your calendar to learn this skill? Can you take 1 o'clock in the afternoon, or can you take time right after our morning meeting to dive into this? Give yourself 30 minutes to an hour to really dive into this for a time. And then we'll talk about, how you're progressing, and just help them, coach them through it. Instead of micromanaging them, coach them through it. How can you learn this? How can you take the time to do it? And then I think too, helping them know why. I'm that type of person that if you ask me to do something, I need to know why. What's in it for me? Like, why do I need to do this? I love learning. So I'm not always asking, why do you want me to learn something? But I do like the idea of helping them understand why, how it will help them grow in their job. It will open up opportunities for them within the company, but it also helps their team. It helps our clients, and ultimately it helps our company. So I think those are, good things that we can do. And then finally, if you have something that if you are a cohort and you are helping people on board, because our onboarding programs are much, much longer now. They're no longer 3 months or 6 months. They're now a year, sometimes even 2 years, where you come through in cohorts and you have a mentor of somebody who is working with our new people, helping them on board. You're developing kind of a class of people who came on at the same time. And there's camaraderie there. And then there's a coach, that's helping people. So if you are that person, bring in outside experts. Bring in somebody to speak on leadership, on corporate etiquette, on just any soft skills, how to build a network, how to communicate. Bring in outside people, because what happens is you become like mom. You're the one who they kind of start to tune out because you're always saying it. So bring in somebody else who says the same thing, but maybe says it differently than what you do. Because that's ultimately what we want, is to have people understand that this is their journey, it's their career, and they can take responsibility for it. Because at the end of the day, if you want to be more successful, if you want to change your life, start by changing you. And sometimes that we need to be that encourager. And sometimes we need to be a little bit tough. Tough love is fine. But are people ready for that kind of tough love? You have to meet people where they are. And so if you need help with that, reach out to me. I mean, I'm somebody that I'll be happy to talk with you about things that you can do to help your company. And don't forget that this too shall pass, and that everyone, no matter where they are, if they're in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, or sometimes even 50s, we can all learn new skills. And by continuously learning and providing opportunities for people to learn, we're not only helping grow our culture, our people, but we're growing our company. And that is what makes good companies great. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that this helped you. Please leave a comment below. Let me know what you took away from this, or what your company is doing to help grow people on their team. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.